let's get back into our game.
All right, let's get buckets. Haven't had you on in a while, Kyle. How was your vacation?
I know. It was great. Sadly, it wasn't a paid vacation, but that kind of makes sense because this is not a paid show.
Well, we're on a limited budget, so.
Of $0, perfect.
What is our budget?
Blake, and you did it.
We need to get paid.
I think we have to have people listen before we can get paid, and I don't really think that happens.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so we had a few big games. We had Ohio State hosting Miami last week. What was your initial thoughts from that?
Well, going into the game, I thought and hoped that Miami would show up to play, but the fact that they came out and threw 4 interceptions against the number 2 team in the nation, I really doubt you're ever going to beat the number 2 team in the nation throwing 4 interceptions, and the offense just didn't look good overall for Miami.
I partially agree with that. I mean, you're never going to win a game, but beyond, I mean, it's really hard to look at beyond the interceptions, but beyond the interceptions, the offense I thought looked okay. I mean, they put up points, but then again, you have Ohio State defense just playing shell soft coverage because they're up like 30. But I was kind of impressed with Miami, as weird as that is to say, and they lost, but I was kind of impressed with the way they played, minus the just miscues on offense, but as everything else in general, I was kind of impressed. And Ohio State is going to be very hard to beat if Terrell Pryor plays like that.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at it and you kind of think, oh, like this was a close game. Miami put up some points, but 14 of their points came from just their special teams.
Right.
They scored 2 touchdowns, one off a kickoff return and one off a punt return. So, I mean, that kind of shows that their offense was very limited.
That's true. That's true. I agree with that. Then we had Alabama hosting Penn State, and College Game Day decided to go to that for some reason. But Penn State, they did not. I mean, they kind of showed up. I mean, in theory they showed up, but they didn't. Their offense didn't really show.
Right. I mean, they kind of had the same thing. Same thing happened a little bit as Miami. They had 4 turnovers on the day, and they were playing number 1 team in the nation. And I guess that just goes to show, like, how badly turnovers really are going to hurt you as a team. If you can't take care of the ball against the top teams in the nation, you're really not going to compete with them.
Yeah, I mean, third quarter or maybe early fourth, it was only 17-0. So their defense did a pretty good job of shutting down Alabama's offense, but their offense turned the ball over too many times, and especially like in the red zone. I think they had a fumble in the red zone, and you can't have that. But for an 18-year-old, I was kind of impressed with Robert Bolden's just abilities. He did have a pretty terrible pass when he got hit in the red zone and turned into an interception, but I thought he played pretty well for an 18-year-old kid going into Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I would say that Penn State's future at quarterback looks great because he's going to do nothing but get better. But we'll just have to see what they can keep putting out there around him and see how long Joe Pa is going to stay around.
I hope it's forever.
I hope he dies on the sideline of a game.
That would be so fitting. Kind of weird, but
I mean, his life has been Penn State football. So, how bad could it get?
I don't know. Let's talk about Denard Robinson, and we can maybe start his Heisman push because this kid is absolutely unreal. The first 2 games. And his teams needed every yard that he can give them. And he accounted for 94% of his team's offense on Saturday, including 502 total yards in their win against Notre Dame. This kid he's got flashes of Michael Vick, except just a little bit different. I love this kid. I'm falling more in love with him every week.
Yeah, I mean, he has flashes of Michael Vick, but it seems like he actually might have like a working brain. Hopefully off the field as well as on the field. But just to compare that 94% of total offense of the team's total offense that he had, the highest that Vince Young and Tim Tebow ever had when they were in college was 84% of their team's total offense. And the closest anyone's ever been to that number was Brad Smith in 2005 against Nebraska. For Missouri, he had just under 92% of their total offense.
When you have 885 yards of offense in 2 games, I mean, that's an insane season you're looking at. And obviously it's going to go down and he can't keep that production up. But there's 2 ways to look at this. Your next 3 opponents, they're playing UMass, Bowling Green, and Indiana. You can look at that as he's going to continue the offense, or you can look at it as they're going to try and save him. And once they get a lead in those games, they're probably going to pull him and give him some rest so he's not getting beat up for 12 games every year. And so I would imagine his yards go down, but he's got to be the top of the Heisman list right now because he's playing just unreal football.
I mean, statistically, in the fact that he's led Michigan to 2 wins over not completely terrible teams.
No, not at all.
Like, UConn's pretty good, and Notre Dame, no one really knows what to expect anymore, but we do know that they're a good football team. They're not a UMass or a Bowling Green. That's for sure.
Let's talk about the ACC and what exactly has happened to that conference. They had 5 preseason top 25 teams, and now every one of those teams has at least one loss. Most notably, Virginia Tech, who has started off the season 0-2. What exactly happened to that team?
Well, you can look at it one of two ways. You can look at it as they came out and lost to a great Boise State team and played them a tough game and then just had a letdown the following week. Or you can look at it as Virginia Tech isn't that good and Boise State really isn't that special, if that's how you're going to look at it. So that could in the long run hurt Boise State if it comes down to them potentially getting into the national championship game.
My thinking on it is that they just couldn't. I actually don't know what to think. I think Boise State's okay. They're sitting at 3 right now. If they go undefeated, in my mind, they should be given a shot to compete for that title. All they've done the last few years is challenge themselves, and they've scheduled Virginia Tech, who was a top 10 preseason team, and last year they scheduled Oregon, who was a top 15 preseason team, and all they've done is beat both of those teams. I mean, I don't understand like the critics that say that Virginia Tech's loss to James Madison hurts Boise State. Boise State can't control what Virginia Tech did. Virginia Tech was a heralded team, and from the looks of it, I don't know if they'll bounce back from those losses, but I think that they're actually a really good team with Tyrod Taylor and Ryan Williams and just everything that they have. I think they're a good team, and I don't understand why we're knocking Boise State for challenging themselves when you don't see a lot of preseason top 10 matchups every year.
Right. I think one of the reasons that they might kind of get knocked is because I don't think people realize how hard it is for Boise State to schedule a good early season game because nobody wants to go to Boise and play them. They're really tough to beat there. And nobody wants to schedule a home-and-home with them. So they did what they could in getting a top 10 Virginia Tech team to play them at a neutral site that wasn't really neutral at all.
Right. I mean, I'm all for letting Boise State play for the national championship if they go undefeated. I think they deserve that shot.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, if a team goes undefeated through a season, it's hard to keep them out of the national championship game no matter really who they play. But the fact that they've scheduled Virginia Tech and I believe they play Oregon State.
Yes.
Next week. So I guess if they win that Oregon State game, it looks like they are a serious national championship contender.
All right, and then still in the ACC, we had Miami obviously lose to Ohio State. We talked about that. We had Florida State go to Oklahoma and just get trashed, which really surprised me. And then we also had Georgia Tech lose to Kansas, who lost to a 1AA team in week 1. So the ACC, everyone kind of talked about, I think I talked about it a little bit, how that conference was on the rise, and now all 5 of their preseason teams have a loss. So not a great start for that conference.
Right. Well, you look at it a little bit, and you can kind of excuse Miami, and you can kind of excuse Florida State, because they both lost to very talented teams, Florida State doing so at Oklahoma. But the Georgia Tech loss to Kansas makes you it makes me at least question preseason polls and how accurate they can be, like, in this situation, because Georgia Tech, what were they ranked?
13?
Do you know exactly where they were?
I think they were 12 or 13.
Okay. I mean, they were ranked fairly high, and they went and they lost to a Kansas team who is supposed to be one of the 2 worst teams in the Big 12 North this season. They're not expected to be good.
Let's move to the Big 12, who a lot of us actually care about. And looking at the Big 12, the entire Big 12 South is actually undefeated, which is, I guess, kind of it's kind of a notion to say how tough the league's going to be, or just they haven't played anybody. But the only two teams I think that have actually been challenged, Oklahoma played Utah State pretty close, and who else had a close game?
Oklahoma State won by 3 over Troy.
Okay. But the entire Big 12 South is undefeated, and that has to change because Texas and Texas Tech play this weekend in a game that I think Texas is very beatable, and I didn't think that they would be, but they have not looked all that great, I don't think. And Texas Tech's offense, surprisingly, hasn't changed that much, and they're throwing it about as much as they always have.
Yeah, I think that's a good sign for Texas to continue to throw. I looked, and they were ranked in the top, at least the top 20 in passing yards per game, and they're like 97th in rushing yards per game. And I'm sure Tech fans love to see Tuberville come in and kind of keep up Leach's offense because it was a great attack. But I wonder if that will stay consistent as they start to play bigger, better opponents and if they'll use their running game to control the ball or if they'll continue to pass for first downs.
Yeah, we'll talk about this game more later, I guess, when we actually pick it. But Texas defense has been good, but the offense is just, I mean, they're going to have their third starting running back in 3 games. They can't pick one, which I guess is good because you're having someone emerge as an actual starter every game. So it's good and bad, but they have to get their passing offense going because it just hasn't, their offense has not looked good. Oklahoma beat up on Florida State, and we talked about that a little bit. But that really surprised me because I thought Florida State would go in and at least make it a close game, and I actually thought they were going to win it. But Oklahoma surprised me, especially the way they did it, because I thought if they were going to win, they would have to give DeMarco Murray the ball a lot. And they actually did it with the pass against a pretty good Florida State secondary. And so I guess it reset Oklahoma for me, and they now, I would say they look like the team to beat in the Big 12 South.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree. They're the only team that's played a legitimately good team in Florida State that America thinks is going to be good this season. And they came out and they dominated that Florida State team. They took care of the football. Landry Jones didn't have an interception versus the 2 he had against Utah State. And I think he threw for 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, 4 touchdowns.
And after the first couple of drives of the game, you could just tell that it was out of Florida State's hands and that the game was over.
Let's pick some winners. Texas going to Texas Tech in Lubbock. Who do you have in that game?
I'm going to go with Texas. I just think that they'll come around. I think Mac Brown is a great coach, and he'll have them ready for the Red Raiders, and then they'll come out and slow down the Tech offense and control the ball, and in the end they'll win what will probably be a pretty close game.
I agree. I'm also going with Texas. I think their secondary is vastly underrated, but they have some NFL players, just like they've had the last few years in that secondary. They have some great NFL players, and that's what you're going to need against Texas Tech because they're going to air it out. You got to have the feeling that they got to get that offense straightened out sometime, and if they don't, they will lose. But I think Texas pulls it out in probably another close game like they had 2 years ago where Crabtree won it. Nebraska's going to Washington, and the only reason I put this game in here to pick is because I don't like Nebraska, and I feel like Washington has a decent team. Who do you have in this game?
I actually have Nebraska. I think Washington does have a pretty good team. I'm actually really excited about this game because I love getting to watch Jake Locker. I think that he is a poor man's Tim Tebow, and I'm a fan of that. But I think that Nebraska will be able to slow him down enough, and the Nebraska defense will kind of control the game for the most part. It hasn't been as great as some Nebraska fans might have been hoping for early in the season, but I think they'll work out the kinks and they'll shut the Washington offense down.
I'm hoping Washington wins, and I have picked them, but my pick is purely based on my dislike for Nebraska because I do not believe that they deserve their ranking. So I'm going with Washington to pull the huge upset at home and rush the field. Let's talk about Iowa going to Arizona, which is a top 25 matchup. Iowa's definitely favored in this game, but Arizona's been impressive their first 2 weeks, and it's a home game for them. I'm going with Iowa just because that team is absolutely solid, defense and offense, and They were up 35-0 on Iowa State. Not that Iowa State's any good, but rivalry game, and they went up 35-0. But I'm taking Iowa. Who do you got?
My mind tells me that I'm going with Iowa, but my heart tells me that Arizona is going to win this game. Why? Because I think Luke Walton is going to show up at this football game and inspire this Arizona team to play above and beyond themselves. And for that reason, they'll take out Iowa this weekend.
You had to get Luke Walton in there, didn't you?
It's in my contract. I have to mention him in every podcast.
That's true. Houston is going to UCLA. In Case Keenum might not play. He might play. He's day-to-day with concussion-like symptoms. So if he can't play, I'm still picking Houston. I just don't, because I don't know if UCLA can stop that offense. But if he does play, I think Houston becomes a top 25 team. They got votes this last week, but I think they could become a top 25 team traveling to the Rose Bowl in a hostile environment and beating UCLA.
Well, I go with Houston in this game also, regardless of who plays quarterback. If you play quarterback for Houston, I'm picking Houston because UCLA has given me no reason to think that they're going to be even an average football team. UCLA got shut out this past week by Stanford. The UCLA offense hasn't exactly looked good, and the defense didn't look too hot against Stanford from what I got to see of that game. And I just think Houston's going to come out and put up a big number on the scoreboard, and UCLA won't even be close.
Notre Dame coming off a loss against Michigan now will travel to Michigan State and try and bounce back. And although Michigan State did just beat Florida Atlantic, I would have to anticipate Notre Dame can handle them on the road. Assuming that Dane Chris can play. I'm not exactly sure what's wrong with his eye, but their offense was 20 times better with him quarterbacking than he actually led that comeback before they lost the game. But I'm picking Notre Dame in hopes that Dane Chris can play.
Yeah, I go with Notre Dame too. I didn't get to watch a lot of their game against Michigan, but it's Michigan State's first real game. They've played Florida International and someone else who doesn't matter at all in the grand scheme of things. And I think that Notre Dame is going to come out ready to play because that was a tough loss against Michigan. And I think they'll come out ready to play and that they'll beat Michigan State.
All right, last game. Baylor traveling to TCU to play the number 6 ranked Horned Frogs. As a Baylor Bear, are you picking Baylor this weekend for the huge upset?
I'm not, because as a Baylor Bear fan for the 20 years of my life, they've given me no reason to pick them in any big football game. I think the only way Baylor even stays in the game is if Art Briles opens up the playbook a little bit. This past week, there were way too many screens, way too many runs up the middle, just like against Sam Houston State in week 1. And if that doesn't change, the Bears are going to be in for a long day.
I'm hoping they keep it close, and I'm hoping they win, but I'm picking TCU because, like you said, they've given me no reason to pick them. They haven't been ultra impressive in their first 2 wins, although, I've been impressed with the way that their defense has played. But, like you said, the offense with all their screens, and, it's almost too predictable, and against great athletes like TCU has, that could really backfire. But I'm really hoping for a close game. You
want to move on to the NFL and talk a little bit about what we saw week 1 there?
Yeah. What'd you think of the Texans' win over the Colts?
That Texans win over the Colts is arguably the biggest win in franchise history. I realize they went 9-7 last year, and winning that final game against, I think, the Patriots got them their first ever winning record. This puts them in the driver's seat to get a playoff spot. People predicted them for possibly a wild card. This just showed that they're actually going to be good this year. And I was really impressed because they did it with Andre Johnson catching 3 passes and Matt Schaub throwing for right around 100, 110 yards.
Right. And that's what's impressive to me, because going into the next few weeks, you can't just play the pass because you have Arian Foster coming off a 200-yard day. You have to stack the box, and that's going to make Andre Johnson he's going to be so open, it's not even going to be funny. So this offense is probably going to become a little more balanced and going to be very hard to stop. The only thing that will prevent another Texans win this week, in the next few weeks, will probably be turnovers. Matt Schaub had a terrible pick, but barring turnovers, I think this team looks really good. And keep in mind, the defense played that well without Brian Cushing on the field.
Right, but you also have to think the defense did play well, but they need to fix some things in that secondary because Peyton Manning absolutely tore them up, throwing for a little bit over 400 yards, which is absolutely ridiculous numbers, which I'm not mad about because he's on one of my fantasy teams.
Yeah, can't be mad about that. Another Texas team, Cowboys, lost to the Redskins last night on Sunday Night Football, and I'm putting that on the offense because they gave up the fumble and the scoop and score right before the half, which gave Washington 7 points. And to only score 7 points of your own, for that offense with all the stars they have, I blame that loss on the offense because giving up 17 points, actually your defense only gave up, 10 points?
No, it was only 13-7, so the defense only gave up 2 field goals.
2 field goals, okay. Yeah, so gave up 2 field goals. So your defense, very solid. Your offense lost you the game there. And Cowboy fans, should they be worried right now?
I think they are worried because they're Cowboys fans.
Right.
But I don't know that there's any complete reason to be worried. At least the Redskins didn't beat the Cowboys, and the Cowboys beat themselves. I think that's probably one of the more encouraging things that Cowboys fans can take away from that because the ending play of each half made the difference in the game. The first half, the fumble taken back for a touchdown, and the second half, the holding call to negate the touchdown and in the game. So I think the Cowboys will still be a playoff team, but nothing makes me happier than watching them suffer.
I would agree. Final note, Michael Vick came in off the bench and put on a show yesterday. What are your thoughts on that? Because we both love Michael Vick on this podcast. When
I said that nothing made me happier than watching the Cowboys suffer, yesterday Michael Vick getting a chance to lead that Eagles offense made me so much happier. Every time the ball was snapped to him, I was on the edge of my seat in excitement. He turned the offense for the Eagles around in that game. He brought them back into the game, and they ended up coming up short. But I was very impressed with Michael Vick. It just goes to show that he should be and hopefully will be starting somewhere in the NFL within the next year.
Yeah, he came in down 17, and he nearly completed the comeback. The biggest problem I had was their play call on that 4th and 1 when they were trying that. That was so predictable. A run up the middle. If you have a quarterback that's very fast and left-handed, you've got to get him outside the pocket and give him the option to throw, because then they have to respect that. And so the play call on 4th down, which ended their comeback, I was really not happy with. But he put on an absolute show, and he might have to start this week with Kevin Kolb out with a concussion, but we don't know if Kevin Kolb will be able to play or not. But if he does start, I will definitely be watching because I'm a huge Michael Vick fan, and I hope he gets a chance to actually start a real game somewhere. Maybe not Philly, but somewhere in the near future. I hope he gets to actually have a starting job. Yeah,
I agree. The play call on 4th and 1 that essentially ended that game made literally no sense. You take away the strength of your quarterback. Like Kevin Kolb could have come out there with a concussion and run the play that they had Michael Vick running. I don't know why you would ever call that play for the fastest quarterback in the NFL, the most electric quarterback in the NFL. But they did, and they paid the price for it.
All right, well, that's it for us. We'll be back next Monday with thoughts on another week in football. And, one final note. How about Team USA? Kevin Durant absolutely destroying the rest of the world over in Turkey in the FIBA World Championship.
I really couldn't have been more proud of Team USA. That makes me want to say, LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Melo, if y'all didn't want to come, then we'll just leave you at home next time. Like, y'all aren't even going to get the invite. We're just going to take the team that we just proved we can win with, and we'll go win with them again.
KD went from borderline superstar to absolute no one can touch this kid. He was unconscious the entire tournament. He could do literally anything he wanted. One game had 38, and he put on a show. If you didn't get to watch any of those games, I feel bad for you because the kid is 21 years old and doing some of the things that he does. He's not as physically gifted as LeBron James, and so a lot of people are really quick to point out, oh, he can't be the best player in the world because he doesn't ferociously just go attack the bucket. He doesn't have to. He is just absolutely skilled, and he very well could be the best player in the NBA in the next few years. No one's going to be able to stop him next year when he plays for the Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Thunder are going to have a huge season, and this just kind of affirmed that with how well he played, and also Russell Westbrook played very well for Team USA.
All right, well, until next week, have a great week. We love you. Got anything?
Get buckets.
Get buckets.
Get buckets.